Officer Cleveland has come in to talk to us. We've talked to a police officer before. This group's had a police officer come and speak before.
Yeah.
So I think we'll focus primarily on the SRO aspect. But there is a little bit of crossover there.
Yes.
So we'll start with the first question. Officer Cleveland, what is your job and who do you work for?
All right. Well, hello. My name is Christopher Cleveland, or Officer Cleveland. Most of y'all know me as. I work for the Sevier County Sheriff's Office, and I work for Sheriff Michael Hodges. I've worked for the Sheriff's Office for 12 years. It'll be 13 this November. My job, or my main assignment throughout the school year, is I'm a school or student resource officer. So I'm here within this school, and I keep everyone and everything safe within our school. So whether it's our students, our teachers, our staff, our principals, any guests, maintenance workers, anybody that comes in and out of our school, I have to make sure that they stay safe, that we don't have any intruders or anybody comes into our school threatening our schools. So you'll see me going throughout the day. I'm checking all the doors, classroom, teachers' doors, checking the outdoor exterior doors, making sure everything's locked up and safe and secure. And then also throughout the day, I get to kind of interact with you all and get to know you all. Most of y'all I got to know last year as 7th graders. Of course, now y'all are 8th graders this year. And I do consider this a career instead of a job. Like I said, I've been doing this. I've been in law enforcement for since November of 2011. So 13 years. I've been in the schools as a school resource officer. I was at Sevier Middle School from August 2012 until now.
All right. So that kind of answered this question of how long you did this kind of work.
Yep.
But we can touch back on something else. This wasn't the first thing you ever did. Your first job was not a police officer.
No.
Talk a little bit about the jobs you did before you became a police officer.
Okay. So about my junior or senior year in high school, I worked and got an application and applied for Dollywood. So I worked at Dollywood, and I worked in the games throughout the park where they're, hey, come on over, play this game, shoot the basketball, shoot the water gun, try to race to the top, and all those different games throughout the park. And then I also worked at some of the theaters around Pigeon Forge, like the Magic Beyond Belief Theater and the Miracle Theater, some of those theaters up there. The theater that I was working at the end, when they closed down in the beginning of 2011, was not going to be coming back. So I had to find something to do. And I had money saved up. I also got accepted into the police academy, which is up at Walter State, Greenville's campus up in Greenville, Tennessee. And I got accepted in there. It was a 8 weeks or 2-month course from about the end of July all the way until about the middle of September. On September 16th is when we graduated. And we stayed there from Sunday evening when we checked in until Friday afternoon or evening once we got done with all of our work. And our teachers or instructors, they would dismiss us and we got to go home for the weekends.
So something that we've talked about in here is that you graduate from a Sevier County high school, so Seymour,
I went to Seymour
with at least a B average. You can go to Walter State for free. You can probably apply that to Police Academy through Walter State. So that's a very valuable thing. Has anybody in here ever considered a career in law enforcement, military, anything like that? Okay, so those are all options. There are jobs also, if you're interested in the military, you can be a police officer in the military. That is a legitimate career field as well. And then that transitions very well when you get out of the military into going into civilian police service.
Yes.
I have a nephew that's done that. What do you enjoy most about your job, Officer Cleveland?
Well, as a school resource officer, I enjoy, it's unpredictable about the day. I get different things that happen throughout the day, different times throughout the day. But mainly I get to enjoy getting to know you guys. I've got to know y'all some last year in 7th grade year, and then this year as well. Hopefully most of y'all will be here next year for 9th grade. I'll get to know y'all a little bit more next year as well. But just kind of getting to know you all and getting to know your names, a little bit about y'all and stuff like that. Just getting to interact within the schools and the community that I pretty much grew up in as well.
So prior to your time as an SRO, that wasn't very long, but what did you enjoy about just being I guess you would say a standard patrol officer?
Yeah, like I said, it was also unpredictable because you don't know what you could be going from. If you were going from a call where you're working a wreck, or whether you're working a domestic incident where there's couples fighting, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, and then you go to a next call where there's an older lady that just needs you to help her get something off the top shelf of her cabinets in her kitchen or something like that. So
I've said this before, and you can tell me if it's correct or not, that I've heard that those domestic calls are among the most dangerous calls that police officers go on.
yes, yeah.
Why is that?
Because it's very unpredictable. You don't know what you're getting into. Whether or not there's weapons in the house when you're entering the house, how escalated, if they're screaming, shouting. A couple years back, I had an incident where the mom was out on the front lawn whenever we got there, screaming and shouting, throwing stuff in the yard. And there was a girl, she was about your all's age. She came up to me and she said, "Officer Cleveland, I'm so glad you're here." And she gave me a hug. It was one of the saddest things because her mom was acting out, and her and dad, or the dad and mom, were fighting amongst each other. Unfortunately, I had to take mom, but it's kind of hard sometimes.
How did you decide on a career path that took you into law enforcement?
So I grew up in a law enforcement family. My dad has been in law enforcement for almost close to 50 years. He just recently retired from the Sevier County Sheriff's Office, but he's still a reserve with our reserve division at the Sheriff's Office. So I kind of grew up in it, and I've always had some of an interest in law enforcement. He never really encouraged me, but he also didn't discourage me from getting into law enforcement. And then once the theater closed down and I had the money saved up and I was accepted into the police academy, I knew it was something I was wanting to do, and I had always had an interest in. That I got into the police academy and then got hired with the sheriff's office a couple months later.
You told one of the other classes that sometimes that's a little backwards from how it normally happens.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the other way of being hired as a police officer.
So I paid my way through as a student, and at the time, whenever I went through in 2011, it was like I said, the summertime, from July until about mid-September. It cost me about $3,000 to $5,000 just for. We stayed there, so they fed us breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we had to pay for our meals, like our class textbooks, and then all the equipment that I had to purchase for the police academy. Now, if you're hired on with a department, and they will normally pay your way through the police academy, so you're getting paid to go through the police academy. They supply you with all your equipment. They'll supply you with probably a used or older patrol car to drive to and from. When we went home on the weekends, stuff like that. So I was using my personal vehicle at the time and driving to and from and paying for my own gas and everything like that.
So we didn't really talk about this in other classes, but what would Sheriff Hodges be looking for when he's hiring maybe an 18, 19-year-old kid, and what things is he looking to disqualify, do you think, for that kind of job?
That's a very good question. Your academics, how well you've done in school, and then also your disciplinary actions. Like they go back and they look into your social media accounts, whether you've posted something or shared something or had something that might be maybe not appropriate. They're starting to look into stuff like that now. Also, whether you have something on your record, once you start driving, whether you have hopefully no one gets out, but say you got a DUI or something on your record, they'll look at something like that. And just maybe other disciplinary actions. If you've been arrested for assault, maybe you got into domestic and you were arrested for hitting mom or dad, something at home, something like that. So they look into the stuff like that. It's always encouraged. Sometimes they'll promote from within. So if you can get hired on in like one of our jails as a corrections officer, I've known some friends that started out in the jails and then they got hired on as patrol officers, and they've moved up the ranks and are now captains over the jail or gone higher up within the sheriff's office.
In the past, a lot of times when you thought of a police officer or someone in law enforcement, people tend to think men, but
yes,
that's not the case anymore, right?
That is correct. One of our chief deputies, she had started out, I think, on patrol or maybe as a sergeant or something on one of our patrol shifts, and also in our detectives division. She's now a chief deputy, which is only maybe one or two underneath the sheriff in our ranking system. We also have, that I know of, one of our first road sergeants. That's a female patrol road sergeant over one of our patrol shifts, that she's responsible for about maybe 10 or 12 officers during that shift, that 12-hour shift.
So it's a viable option. What skills or education are important for success in your field? Obviously, the police academy is important, but what kind of personal skills would they look for in a police officer?
Just being very vigilant, aware of your surroundings, kind of like what's going on, because you always have to be vigilant about what could happen. You never know, something could happen right now on the other side of the school, and I'd have to rush over there. Or also, like I said, it's also they look at your academics, whether if you can advanced on and got your associate's degree or like a bachelor's degree, master's. That also affects and they provide incentives for like a pay increase and pay raises if you get those different types of degrees. And it also helps out with the promotion boards, like if there's a promotion for a spot, like as a corporal or a sergeant on patrol, or within our detectives division as a CID or detective.
Mm-hmm. We talked about how they can begin learning that kind of stuff
Just
right at the next school.
Yes, yep. And I was talking to Keisha about that. She said she had spoken to me about taking some criminal justice classes at the high school next year. And that's something, if y'all, I know most of y'all have been working on your 4-year plans. If you're interested, I'd highly suggest trying to get into those criminal justice classes if you can, if you're any interest in law enforcement or anything like that. Just try to get into those just to kind of start you out.
And if you just think you might be interested, you can sign up for the summer camp at the junior high. It's a 4-week program, but you don't have to do all 4 weeks. You can do 1 or 2 weeks of it. Criminal justice is one of the classes that's taught in that. There's also classes on like agriculture type stuff, welding, technology. I'm teaching 2 technology classes, podcasting and video editing. So there are a lot of interesting things going on with that summer camp if you're interested. If you have parents that go to work and leave you at home and you get bored of staying home all the time, it's a good option. What's a challenge or obstacle that you've had to overcome in your career, Officer Cleveland?
Just kind of just for being on the road, just being vigilant, being proactive, just trying to get to know my community better. I used to be more kind of reserved, kind of shy. I don't know. I didn't really talk to this class as much about that, but just being more outspoken, just kind of because you also have to be able to like de-escalate a situation sometimes. Try to talk someone down if they have an anxiety or panic attack, or if something's, because most of the time people will see us at their worst, or I see people at their worst. So it's just trying to help comfort them as well. That's going to be difficult at times as well. Within the schools, at first I wasn't really sure if I wanted to come into the schools, but they had offered me a school spot, and I've loved it ever since because I get to know, like I said, you guys throughout the school years and everything. So,
what kind of playing off this? What is a challenge or obstacle you have to deal with in working with students specifically?
Well, I help with disciplinary issues sometimes. If any of our principals ask me to step in on a disciplinary issue, I'll step in on some of those. And unfortunately, I've had to arrest some students or juveniles in the past for like a disorderly conduct, whether you're acting out in class with your teachers. For fights, we've had people where if somebody got beat up or assaulted so badly, they've had to be arrested. Also where with something very, very serious is school threats. Any type of threat towards the school, towards someone else, whether you say you're going to bring a gun to school or you're going to bomb the school, shoot up the school, whether you're going to kill yourself, kill someone else. That's something that we have to take very seriously nowadays. Even if you're joking about something like that, you cannot joke about that, because say somebody comes in the next day and they bring a gun or something happens. It's something we have to take very seriously. And unfortunately, like I said, we are taking it seriously, and we've had some students in the past that have been arrested and have had to go to juvenile. They've had to go to court after they've spent their time in juvenile, and they've got court costs, fees. Mom and dad has to take a day off from work. They'll be on a probation for so many months. So it's a very, very serious thing. And I like to tell students that we, as teachers and staff, we see and hear a lot that goes on within the schools. But you all see and hear a lot more, whether it's talking to your friends, being on social media. So we rely on you all as well to come tell somebody. whether it's me, whether it's Mr. Davis, somebody you trust within the school, please come tell us if there's ever any problems or issues that involve safety within our schools.
So SROs have not always been a thing. In fact, I have direct experience with one of the cases that led to us having police officers at every school. I was a fairly young reporter in La Follette when one of my good friends from church was killed by a student at Campbell County High School. Kid took a gun to school. Principals found out about it. Rather than calling the police, they pulled the kid into a room, or they didn't pull him in. They called him in and they asked if he had a gun, and he just took it out and shot 2 of them, or shot 3 of them, killed 1 of them, which led to a lot of big changes in how things have been handled. And it was unfortunate. The guy sat 1 pew ahead of me in church. I saw him every week with his family, and it decimated that family. But those things happen, and that's why we have to take such things seriously. What advice would you give to someone who's considering a career like yours, or just in law enforcement in general?
Like we said, for y'all going into high school, all y'all next year, try to get involved in those criminal justice classes, take those classes. If you can get hired on with a department somewhere after you graduate from high school, or get into corrections, working in a jail, like I said, sometimes they'll usually promote from within the department. Or if you have any experience, whether you go into the military after high school, become like a military police or something like that. We've had some officers start in military and then go into law enforcement that way as well.
Yeah, our sheriff, I think, was
Yes, I think
military
so.
police for the Air Force.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're at a time for questions. I know you guys are in 8th grade and really cool, so you probably don't care a whole lot, but I do keep up with who asks questions because you get bonus points in our little career cup thing. So anybody who has a decent question, let's ask. You've got the school officer here. He'll answer whatever within reason. He's got to maintain privacy. You know, don't ask about a specific incident, but yes, ma'am.
What is the funniest thing that you saw on camera?
The funniest, like a funniest call or something I've been to?
No, the funniest thing you've seen on
the
our
school cameras? Oh, there's been all kinds of bloopers and things throughout the years. I know many of y'all may have not had Mr. Loy as your principal, but there was one year, and I don't know if he wants me to tell the story, but I will.
He doesn't care.
Yeah, he was walking towards the 8th grade and 7th grade hallways, and he was looking into our library, and you know how there's those poles there, right? So he was looking in there. He was looking to see if our librarian had a moment, but she was teaching a class. The next thing you know, he turns and he bumps and hits this pole. It was funny, but it was not, because he goes and he continues around the corner in here, coming down the 8th grade hallway, and he's leaning up against the wall, and you can tell he is not feeling well at all after this incident here. But our custodians took it a little step further. They took some toilet paper and wrapped it around the poles just to. And I think I've got a picture or something that's saved on our cameras. But
if you guys know Officer Matt at the intermediate school, he would have been there when you were in 6th grade. It was his first year there. Or actually, he might not have come to next year. Anyway, There's a video that circulates regularly of me when I had foot surgery on a scooter, and I was going down the hall, and you're kicking with one foot while your other one's up on the knee scooter, and my jeans hung on the wheel, and boom, there I went, boom, down in the floor. And Officer Matt, I would regularly be in the hall and hear people laughing over there watching the video, which, I'm an adult. I don't care. I think it's funny. It's hilarious. I don't mind being a little made fun of, but I'm sure there are a lot of funny things they see. Who else got a question? Go ahead.
Have you ever got like a prank call?
What do you mean?
Like, has someone ever prank called you?
Like me personally?
I guess, yeah.
Like a false report call.
Yes, I think we've had if it was like a threat or something, or they're trying to be funny and call the school. We've had, in the past, we had an incident, I think, where it was after school hours, and they called. Miss Humble answered the phone, and they were making a threat, and they were using foul language, vulgar language, and I actually came up to the school, and we went through the school with one of our bomb dogs, and we searched the school, and we didn't find anything. But I mean, I think these kids were trying to play it off as a prank, but they got in trouble for it.
Yeah, I think there were a few kids that got in quite a bit of trouble a few years ago. I remember I think it was the intermediate school before they moved or something. Some bomb threats and things.
Yes,
I think they
yeah.
got into some serious trouble.
No. There was one year we had, I think it was actually our first year here. Some of our students, we used to let our students off, and they came through the doors right there close to Coach Paffenger's office. They'd drop off right there, and they'd come in through that way. So one morning, and we used to have all the students sitting in the gym and the bleachers in the morning before they dismissed them to go to class. But this student, he just kind of barely flicked it, but I guess his friends were enticing him or encouraging, but he hit the fire alarm. I was standing in the gym, and then we had a couple of teachers on bus duty or morning duty that day. Our principals hadn't gotten here yet, and, well, we weren't planning for a fire drill, so we all evacuated out. It was cold January, February morning. It was kind of misting outside, but we all had to stand outside until the fire department got here, and we determined that it was a false alarm. And this kid got in some trouble for pretty much causing a panic, false alarm with the fire alarms. This kid, I don't think, had ever gotten in any trouble, but he got in a little bit of trouble after that. So
I'm going to guess his friends who had to stand in the rain probably didn't appreciate it very much either.
Yeah, no. So.
All right, what else? Yes, Abigail?
Was this what you wanted when you were a kid?
No, I actually had some other interests. I had an interest for the longest time. I wanted to be a lawyer when I grew up. And I'm still I'm not a lawyer, but I'm within the realm of law and law enforcement. And then I also always thought it was cool, like being an archaeologist, kind of like an Indiana Jones. I thought that would have been kind of cool, traveling the world and stuff like that, but I never did that. So.
All right, what else? Yes, sir, William.
What do you do in the summer?
All right, that's a good question. Yes. So right now, I'll actually be here for the summer schools, but most of the time before the summer schools, I'd be out on the roads patrolling and answering calls for service, or they might have me in like a different assignment. Sometimes I've also got to experience and help out at the courthouse as like a security officer there at the courthouse. Sometimes as like a bailiff that you see, like whenever you watch on a court show where all rise, stuff like that. I've helped out with that as well. So.
Mm-hmm. And with where our sheriff's office is located, it's right there. Currently, it's right there by the courthouse. So,
yes. Yep.
So you saw another hand there, Abigail, right?
Did you went to this school before, like as a kid?
I did go to Seymour. Did I go to Seymour?
Like, senior year in high school?
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
Like this school when you were a kid?
I went to Seymour Middle School. So the school did y'all go to the Seymour Intermediate School across the street? Most of y'all or some of y'all? That was Seymour Middle School. Actually, originally the Boys and Girls Club was my first Seymour Middle School that I went to. It was 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. And then that next year, they had built the Seymour Middle School, which is across the street, and now the Seymour Intermediate School. I went 6th, 7th, and 8th grade was the first 6th, 7th, and 8th grade class there. I know y'all are 8th grade. Miss Ballard, many of y'all might have her or got to know her throughout this year. She was my teacher in 6th grade. I had her for science in 6th grade, and then my 8th grade year, I got to have her for homeroom for science and social studies. So, and then there's probably a few other teachers. Coach Lauderdale in 9th grade, I had him for a few history classes in high school. There might be maybe one or two more, maybe like Miss Maggie or some of the office staff that were office staff when I was in Seymour Middle School. So.
Something I wanted Officer Cleveland to talk to you guys about, because I think it's a really important thing. Most of you are getting to where you're almost into driving age. And with that, there's going to be a time in your life where you're pulled over by a police officer. And that can be a very intimidating situation. I will admit, from age 16 to about 25, I think I was pulled over 8 or 9 times, I would say, because I had a little sporty car and I was kind of reckless. But I was taught from a young age, when a police officer talks to you, how you should respond. How should you respond?
Just be respectful with what you say and what you do to them. They're not going to give you any outlandish commands or anything to do, but just be mindful of what you're doing. Keep your hands kind of like on your steering wheel. If you have to reach somewhere, say I need to grab my registrations or proof of insurance from the glove box. Just kind of be mindful of what you're doing. Normally, what we'll do is on a traffic stop, I'll approach the vehicle. We normally kind of put our hands. I've had students in the past couple classes ask about why we touch the back of the vehicle. That's just for like our fingerprints are now on the vehicle. Say if the vehicle sped away or they drove away and we got in a pursuit, they get away, we could hopefully identify that vehicle by our prints later on if we caught them or found them somewhere else, or if another department somewhere found them. But we'll approach, say who we are, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever it is. Tell them why we stopped them, where we work for, who we are, the sheriff's office, whether it's we're stopping them for speeding, whether it's violation of a traffic control device, whether you ran through a traffic light, a stop sign, whether you've got a tail light out, headlight out. That's another reason you could possibly be stopped. And then just we ask for your license, insurance, proof of registration. If you don't have a license, that's usually a red flag or a sign that somebody might be revoked or suspended on their license. Not always. I've had people in the past that might have taken a picture of their license and they showed it to me, or if they actually know their driver's license number, they'll give it to me and I can put it in our system or call our dispatch and they can verify whether if you have anything on your record or whether you have a suspended or revoked license. So, but just kind of being mindful about what you do, where your hands are. Yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, just being respectful. And then normally the officer, if they do have to issue a citation for something that you might have done, then they'll issue that and then just kind of send you on your way. Sometimes you may just get a warning for whatever might have happened or the incident. So.
A lot of that has to do with how you conduct yourself.
Yes, yep.
So. Why might an officer be leery approaching? You know, a lot of times an officer comes up to your window, they're not super cheerful, sweet, nice, and they're in a mode to protect themselves, basically. Talk about that aspect of just a traffic stop.
Some of the things, like if you're constantly looking back or as we're approaching, or just kind of sometimes if you have multiple people in the vehicles, that can also be just something that we have to be very mindful about. And then just how you act within the vehicle. Like I said, if you're reaching or trying to go for something, and we don't know if you're reaching in the glove box to get a type of weapon, or if you reach in between the seats, it's just, like I said, be very mindful about how you react, and you don't know what could happen. So.
I'm sure you all remember there was a police officer killed maybe 6 or 7 miles from here, down 411 on a traffic stop. The guy driving the car shot him, killed him. So those are things that go through a police officer's mind every time they walk up to the window of the car. So that's why you want to have your hands where they need to be, listen to what they say, and do. Yep. They're not, unless, you know, a 1 in a million situation that you have some kind of weirdo cop, they're going to ask you to do things that are completely normal and that you should be willing to do. All right. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Have you ever been involved in like a big case?
I mean, I've helped our detectives with cases in the past. We had an incident, I don't remember how many years ago, but it was within Seymour. This, I think they believed that the boyfriend killed his girlfriend out here in Seymour, and I actually had to sit on the crime scene overnight because I was working night shift. So, I mean, I wasn't going into the house and collecting evidence, stuff like that, but I've got to help out with things like that. Or if I'm on a crime scene, I have to watch as people come in and out through the tape that's barricaded up around the house, stuff like that. I've helped out with some things like that in the past. So.
Officer Cleveland had the opportunity to become a school resource officer very early in his career. Most people have been an officer for an extended period or something like that. He kind of got lucky. He got to come in pretty early. Yes, sir.
Have you ever been involved in a shootout?
No, I've never been involved in any like shootouts or had to shoot anyone, anything like that. I have had in the past where sometimes sometimes if you have a deer or an animal like a dog or something that's been hit and it's on the side of the road, and I had an incident one year where it was during the summertime. This family, they couldn't pay for a vet bill that their dog had gotten hit and run over, but it was still alive, so I had to put the dog down. That's kind of like the only time I've had to discharge my firearm besides our trainings, which we do trainings a couple of times. We try to do 2 trainings a year with firearms, but it's not always the case. But they're getting more detailed about our trainings and everything and wanting us to be more proactive with that. So.
And probably the majority of police officers retire without ever firing their firearm on in duty while in duty. Hopefully, it remains that way going forward. But you guys all know it's gotten a little more contentious between police and the public. What's that been like as a police officer? Do you see it? Are kids from the first year you were doing this different than kids today?
Yes, it has changed. It's just the kids have changed. Our students have changed. We have quite a few people that move in from different states and from throughout the United States, and so we have just different attitudes, behaviors that come in. And I mean, I'd love to say I could go throughout my career with never having to arrest anybody or any of our students, but like I said, unfortunately, in the past, I have had to arrest some of our students for some poor choices or mistakes that they've made.
So other than the threats we talked about earlier, what's the one thing you would tell our kids that they shouldn't be doing at school that happens regularly?
Well, I know we haven't really talked about it much in the past classes, but vaping is another major problem. We've had incidences in the past where students have been caught with vapes. If you get caught on a first offense, you get issued so many days punishment for the ALC, and then a second, third, fourth offense, and continue on. If you get caught, you also get a citation from me. You have to go to court. There's court cost fees. Could be possibly spending time in juvenile. But that's another major issue problem. Like I said, we didn't really talk about that in the other classes, but that's one that's been kind of prevalent within the past few years or so. And then just the safety within the schools. If you all see and hear anything, like I was telling the other classes, we had an incident some years ago. There was a boy that found a video or something of a gun. It's holding up a gun, and it's loading it into a backpack. The caption says, "See you on Monday." This was on a Saturday night. So you think, well, that's some type of threat towards the school. The kids, whether it was on some type of social media, there's another student that saw this. She was able to contact Miss McCoy, and Miss McCoy was able to contact our principals and the sheriff's office, and they got the sheriff's office to go out to that boy's house that night and just say he was no longer allowed in Sevier County schools. So they take it very, very seriously.
Yes, Nate.
Has anybody tried to attack you?
I mean, I've had to separate kids in fights, and I think the kids afterwards were like, "Oh, Officer Cleveland, are you okay?" And I'm normally okay, but I've had a few people resist from me. I don't think I've ever really had anybody strike me or hit me, but people like resisting, trying when I'm cuffing and stuff like that. So, and then I saw Ryan, Sarah, I think.
What's like the worst case you've been on?
It was probably that one I was talking about in the first class where there's an incident. It was during the summertime. I got a call of a guy that was walking out in the middle of the roadway out, if any of y'all know where New Center School is. Some of y'all know where that might be. It was off a sharp road out that way. It was about midnight, 1 o'clock, which there's nothing wrong about walking. You can walk. There's nothing wrong with that. But I guess people were kind of suspicious about it. He was walking maybe in the middle of the road, and cars were having to get past him and stuff. So I get out, and I approach this guy, and first thing, I tell him who I am, what's going on, why I'm here. And this gentleman or this guy did not want to have anything to do with me. He's cussing me out, saying, "Get out of here, leave me alone." So I'm like, okay. I kind of step back, reevaluate, and I call one of my supervisors, and I tell him the situation, what's going on. This gentleman or guy, he keeps on walking. And my supervisor says, all right, I think I know who he is. Just kind of catch up with him. Tell him to please be careful, stay out of the middle of the roadway, and just get home safely. So I catch back up to him, and I approach him again. And this time, whenever I approach him, he's got a blade in his hand, and he holds it up to his neck, and he's like, I don't want to live anymore. So this has escalated pretty quickly. So I kind of take another step back, and I call for our supervisors and back up. And the first officer that gets there is a Sevierville City or SPD officer. He comes up, and we were talking, and says, all right, do you have a taser? At the time, I did not have a taser. He had a taser. He says, all right, well, I told him this guy's got a blade or a knife. He's got it behind his back. And so as we're approaching him, he told me to go lethal. So that means I draw my gun from my holster, and I've got it kind of down low, ready, just in case. He had his taser out. So sometimes whenever you have a taser, if you shoot it and it shoots out, the prongs will shoot out, and you try to aim for like a center mass, whether it's the chest or your back. You try to aim for that center mass. Now, if the prongs go out, only one maybe attaches and the other one doesn't attach, you won't have that electricity kind of surging throughout your body. Or if you've got like a big bulky coat or something on, or if it doesn't connect or it doesn't work, you have a malfunction. So that's why he asked me to, said, well, go lethal just in case. So as we're approaching him, we say, hey, drop the knife. We know you got the knife. Drop the knife multiple times. And after about the third or fourth time, the other officer shoots the taser. It hits him about his lower midsection, about his thigh. He goes down, and we are able to take the knife or the blade away from him, restrained him, put the handcuffs on him, and then we got him to the hospital. Anytime someone says that they want to kill themselves or harm themselves or someone else, they have to go to the hospital, be taken for a mental evaluation. When we get there, come to find out he's on some pretty bad drugs. I think he was on meth and something else. But he gave all the doctors and nurses, everyone there, a pretty hard time. But that night could have went really bad. I could have been involved in an officer-involved shooting, whether if that guy, if something would have happened with the taser, or so that was a pretty scary or intense situation that night.
Yes, ma'am.
I know. Did you have a question
Sarah?
as well?
Yes, Sarah.
Like, does your salary differ, or different for like case you do?
No, we get hired in at a pay or an annual salary. So when I started with the sheriff's office some 12, 13 years ago, I started out at $25,500. Over the years, Sheriff Hodges has been able to get us pay raises and increases. I don't know what my yearly annual salary is right now. I can't think of it off my head, but you also get incentives. Like I said, if you get your associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, you get like a pay raise or increase of like maybe 3%, 6%, something like that. And then also if you're hired, or if you come into the department and you've maybe worked in a different department somewhere in another state or something, you have that law enforcement experience, that gives you also an incentive and a higher pay raise and increase as well.
Our county has done a really good job of raising the pay for our sheriff's deputies. And the big reason for that is because a lot of our best sheriff's deputies would end up going to Pigeon Forge or Sevierville or Gatlinburg to make more money. Because the cities, something that you guys don't realize yet, the cities have a lot more money than the county does.
Yeah.
The county generates all its money from property taxes. The cities get all that money from all the rides and attractions and things that people are spending money on, and the county doesn't get that. So the county's always competing to try to keep up with the cities, unfortunately.
Yes,
but I think it's gotten to the point where a starting deputy makes about what a starting teacher does. It's pretty close.
Yes. Yeah.
Pretty close. Much more reasonable. You had another question?
Has anyone ever brought a gun to school or something that you had to deal with?
I'm trying to think. We've had like knives and stuff like that. We've had an incident in the past where somebody was pretending that something was a gun or might have had a toy gun or something, but that I can remember. No, we had an incident some years ago. It was actually when we were across the street. We had a lady that worked in our cafeteria. Her son-in-law and daughter came up to the school, and they came back to the back like delivery door for the cafeteria. And our cafeteria manager, which was Miss Linda at the time, she had saw him the first time, and then this was earlier in the morning, and about a couple hours later they came back, and this was whenever the lunches were started and going on. Miss Linda told me, said, well, this son-in-law and daughter of so-and-so's back here out here again, and they're wanting them to come out here and go with them because he's wanting them to get money out so he can go buy, we believed, to go buy drugs or something illegal. But he made the threat. He had a knife, and then he was going to harm his mother-in-law or his daughter. So I stepped out, kind of just, there was a door in the hallway there of the intermediate school, and I was going to look out to see if they were by that delivery door, and I didn't see anybody. But by that time, they came around to the front of the school and drove up to the front of the school. They came in, they buzzed them in. I wasn't able to relay up to Mr. Lloyd and all the staff, but I'd walked up there as fast as I could. This gentleman was sitting in the front office waiting on his mother-in-law to come from the cafeteria. But I just stepped back behind the desk and go to Mr. Lloyd's office, and I tell him the situation, what's going on. And so we both walked out, and the mother-in-law was coming down the hallway, and we were going to escort this gentleman back out to his vehicle. I called for backup, and I told him, says, you're going to have to leave. And well, he says, well, I'll knock that cop out, maybe under his breath. I never heard him say that, but supposedly he said that. But I walked him out, and our patrol officers, they took it very seriously that this gentleman was there. He possibly had a knife. They took it very seriously. Within moments or minutes, there was other officers just surrounded the front of the school. And they surrounded the vehicle. We told the mother of the son-in-law and the daughter just to stay inside the school. We weren't going to let him go because we didn't know what he was going to do if he had a weapon. And so they took him. I think they charged him with disorderly conduct or was some sort of charge for being on the school grounds. They never found the weapon or the knife. No one was ever in harm, no students. He never made any threats toward the students or staff. But that was kind of an intense situation or kind of scary situation that could have went wrong if he did have thoughts of harming someone else in the school.
There are also, for some cases, there are enhanced punishments for crimes committed in a school or in a school area. Someone sells drugs in the parking lot of a school, it's a worse charge than if they do it at, in their neighborhood or something. It gets escalated up. Yes, sir. You had a question?
Yeah. Where do you take this audit?
You mean, well, we've had, we get calls for like transports to take people to, what is
Peninsula?
that? Peninsula, yes, yeah. Whether somehow they've dealt with the city departments or the county, whether they've made the comment that they wanted to hurt or kill themselves, whether they see or hear voices, stuff like that. The mentally unstable, I guess you could say. We take them to Peninsula. Years ago, we used to take them to Lakeway, but I know they are now closed, and so.
All right. Anything else? Going once? Going twice? All right. Thank you, Officer Cleveland. What do we say?
Thank you. Thank you, guys.